Hello and welcome to today's edition of Daf Yomi, Masechet Bekorot Daf 52 Amud A. So we just start from the end of the last Amud. The Gemara answered, actually he does derive the verb analogy of under, and therefore he excludes the Turefa and diverse kinds from the animal tide. With regard to an animal born by cesarean section, he holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, who says that a human child born by cesarean section is a full-fledged offspring and renders its mother richly impure with the impurity of childbirth. Likewise, with regard to an animal born by cesarean section, he holds the birth was a proper birth, and the animal may be brought as an offering, and therefore it also enters the pen to be tied. And this is not in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, who holds that Rabbi Shimon conceived that an animal born by cesarean section is qualified for being brought as an offering. See near the 40a. And with regard to an animal whose time has not yet arrived, this Tana holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda, who maintains that the obligation of animal tide applies to such an animal. As for an orphan animal, he is referring to a case where the mother's hide exists at birth, the mother's hide is present after the birth, and therefore the animal is not considered an orphan. And Rabbi Yeshua, whose opinion in this Tana follows, conforms to his standard line of reasoning, as he says, even if his mother was slaughtered, but his hide exists at birth, i.e., if the mother's hide is present after the birth, this is not an orphan. Rabbi Shmuel ben Sanriel. Who's that? This sage is not known from any other source. Furthermore, there is no mention of a place called Alkat Levena in any of the statements of the sages. The commentaries note that the name Ben Satriel indicates that he is speaking of matters that are the secrets of God, Sitre Kel. Consequently, his statements should not be interpreted literally as referring to actual physical matters. Rather, they are esoteric statements about the essence of human existence, which are referred to as Ar Lokal, and that's from the Maharal, from a place called Alkat Levena, that's in Hebrew, Levena, Alkat Levena, testified before Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. In Ar Lokal, if an animal dies while giving childbirth, they flay the dead mother's skin and clothe the living newborn animal with it for protection. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said, this testimony of yours reveals the reason for the ruling of the Mishnah, that if the hide of the mother still exists, the offspring is not considered to be an orphan. The hide serves as a substitute for the mother. Rabbi Shmuel ben Satriel also testified before Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. The lettuce in our locale has 600,000 leaves in its omasum, i.e. in its core. So let's explain that. Shishim Ribo, 600,000. The number 6 appears many times in the Gallic statements in varying orders of magnitude. The commentators explain that this number refers to the essence of physical existence. Although the world contains many individual parts, they all make up one unit, and this is signified by the 6 physical directions, i.e. north, east, south, west, up and down, and that's from the Maharal. And what does it mean? Chazirim shebim komenu yesh lohem Shishim Riba Kalofim Beves Hemse Shalo. The lettuce in the locale has 600,000 leaves in the omasum. The omasum is one of the stomachs of the ruminant. Its inner walls contain many ridges. The only comment explains that the omasum of the lettuce is its core. Rabbi Shmuel ben Satriel further testified before Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Once one cedar tree fell in our locale, and it was so wide that 16 wagons passed over its back. What does that mean? Sheish Esrei Koronos al Chudo. The Mara explains that the large cedar represents the absolute height of material existence, and the width of 16 wagons represents its breadth. Just as a public domain is at least 16 cubits wide, he explains the metaphor as referring to the downfall of the entirety of the physical world. The Maharshal maintained that the Seder represents Moses, who through his brilliance in Torah built the tradition for all generations, which are represented by the wagons passing one after the other, meaning the width of his trunk, i.e. as one, side by side. Rabbi Yishmael ben Satriel also testified before Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Once an egg of the bird called a bar yokani, let's see that in the Hebrew, Bayochani. Although the identity of this bird is unclear, the Gemara might be referring to the giant bird, if I can say this, a Poyonis, which in the days of the sages of the Talmud lived on the island of Madagascar and perhaps in other places as well. At that time, reports of existence reached far and wide, and there's a picture here. If you have the Gemara on page 389, fell. An egg of a Bayakani fell. According to the Maharal, this statement is related to the previous one. The giant Bayakani represents heaven, the world beyond the physical, which drowns and overpowers the material world. The Maharsha holds that the Bayakani refers to Moses smashing tablets as a result of the sin of the golden calf. This sin has brought destruction upon the Jewish people and their leaders, represented by the sages throughout the generations. And the contents of the egg drowned 60 cities and broke 300 cedar trees. The Gemara asks, and does the Bayakani bird throw its eggs to the ground? But isn't it written, the Kanaf Renanin bird rejoices, but her wings and feathers those of the stork? For she leaves her eggs on the earth and warms them in dust. From Job 39:13-14. The sages understood the Kaf Renanim is another name for the Bayachani bird. If so, how could its egg fall and if it lays its eggs on the ground? Rav Ashi said in explanation that egg was unfertilized, and since it would never hatch, the bird threw it to the ground. The Mishnah. Shalosh Goronos Lemasa Sa Bahema. Bifras HaPesach Rifras HaTzeres Rifras HaChag. Behein Goronos Shel Maaseh Behema Divrei Rabbi Akiva. There are 3 times during the year designated for gathering. Source of fun, Shalosh Goronos. There are 3 times designated for gathering. Sages establish 3 times annually for designating animal tithe. From those dates onward, it's prohibited for the owner to sell or slaughter his animals until he tithes them. But if he slaughters them, they are permitted. The 3 times are the 15th day before Passover, which is the last day of Adar, the 15th day before Shavuot, which is the 35th day of the counting of the Omer, and the 50th day before Sukkot, which is the last day of Elul. Each of these days is a designated time for separating animal tithe. The reason the sages fix these times is so that there will be animals available for those ascending to Jerusalem for the pilgrimage festivals. Although it is permitted to sell animals before tithing them, many would refrain from selling them until they are tithed. This halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, following the explanation of Rabbi Tachum, son of Rabbi Chia. Rambam says, Bekorot 7a. The animals that were born since the last date for animal tithe, adjacent to Passover and adjacent to Shavuot and adjacent to Sukkot, and those are the gathering times for animal tithe. This is the statement of Rabbi Akiva. Rashi explains that Rabbi Akiva is stressing the fact that these times have the same halacha as gathering of grain, i.e. from that time onward it is prohibited by rabbinic law to sell or slaughter the animals before separating the animal tithe. Ben Azai. Who is Ben Azai? This is referring to Rabbi Shimon ben Azai, one of the Tanaim in Yavna. Shimon ben Azai was never ordained, which is why he does not have a title. And it is usually referred to simply as Ben Azai. Nevertheless, he was considered one of the outstanding sages, and his wisdom was celebrated for many generations. Apparently, he did not learn Torah in his youth until he met Rabbi Akiva's daughter. She promised to marry him if he studied Torah. Consequently, he went to study with Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Shmuel, and was a primary student and disciple colleague of Rabbi Akiva, whom he considered the preeminent sage of the generation. It is unclear whether Ben Azai married at all. It is possible that he married Rabbi Akiva's daughter and left her a short time later due to his overwhelming desire to study Torah. He completely devoted himself to the Torah, as can be seen from the statement of the Mishnah in Surah 49a. After Ben Azai died, there were no more diligent people. His statements appear in both the Mishnah and the Gemara. Apparently, he has several disciples in the Tiberias, his city of residence. Rabbi Ben Azai engaged in the study of esoteric wisdom and was one of the 4 who entered the mystical orchard in the Chagiga 14b. His entrance is described in the following terms. Ben Azai peaked and died. The verse, precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints, Psalms 116:15, is quoted in reference to his death. Says the dates are on the 29th of Adar, on the 1st of Sivan, and on the 29th of Av. Rabbi Shimon says the dates are on the 1st of Nisan, on the 1st of Sivan, and on the 29th of Elul. And why did Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon say the 29th of Elul, and why did they not say the 1st of Tishrei? It is due to the fact that the 1st of Tishrei is the festival of Rosh Hashanah, and one cannot tithe on a festival. Consequently, they brought it earlier to the 29th of Elul. Rabbi Meir says the beginning of the new year for animal tithe is on the 1st of Elul. Ben Azai says the animals born in Elul are tithed by themselves due to the uncertainty of whether the halacha is according to the opinion of Rabbi Meir, i.e. that the new year begins on the 1st of Elul, or in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, which would mean that the new year began on the 1st of Tishrei. According to the opinion of Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, with regard to all animals that were born on the 1st of Tishrei until the 29th of Elul. What's the footnote? All animals born from the 1st of Tishrei until the 29th of Elul are tied together. This halacha is according to the ruling of Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon that the new year for animal tithe is the 1st of Tishrei, as theirs is the majority opinion. 7:6. Those animals joined to be tied together. If 5 were born before Shana and 5 after Shana, the animals did not join to be tied together. If 5 were born before the time designated for gathering and 5 after the time designated for gathering, those animals joined to be tied together. If so, why were 3 times stated for gathering the animal for animal tithe? The reason is that until time designated for gathering arrives, it is permitted to sell and slaughter the animals. Once time designated for gathering arrives, one may not slaughter the animals before tithing them. But if he slaughters an animal without tithing it, he is exempt. The Mishnah teaches that there are 3 times during the year designated for gathering the animals born since the last date for animal tithe. The Gemara asks, what is the difference about these days? Why are there specifically 3 times designated in the year? Rabbi Bashir said, there are 3 times in order to collect the animals born in early winter, and the animals born in later in spring, and the animals born in the summer. The Gemara asks, and what is different about these 3 times? Before Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot, that they are chosen. Rabbi Tachum, son of Rabbi Chia, of the village of Akko, says, that's the end of the Omid. Thank you for listening and all the best. Bye.